Hello, welcome to Fallout Podcast episode 93. It's a Halloween special. Gather around the campfire as we read some of our favourite weird tales. Fall related, of course. And without further ado, let's hear something from the man himself.
The most merciful thing in the world is man's inability to correlate all of his mind's contents. But the sciences one day, some say it is already upon us, will eventually open up such terrifying vistas of reality that we'll either go mad from the revelation or flee into blissful sleep, peace and safety of another new dark age. I'm Mark Edward Smith. These words are H.P. Lovecraft's. We give you the horror in clay.
Cornwall. It's slight accent into C.C. Sheffield, Cornwall.
So starting with some spooky stuff, though, that is the track off the beginning of the post-Neely month, called The Horror in Clay, which is, of course, the beginning of H.P. Lovecraft's story, The Call of Cthulhu. This is a futile fall showdown. Eldritch Gibbous and Unutterable, and joined, as always, by Pip, William Billy Pip Rugby. How you doing, Pip?
Ooh, feeling all spooky. Ooh. Out as well that we're getting photo bombed at the moment by some kind of influence that seems to have penetrated the recording environment.
The vibrations are strong. Lord Sage Temple of Doom. How are you, Ezra? Good start, isn't it?
It's starting, boys.
Well, I'm well, but a figure looms behind me.
I was noticing that. Is there a ghost in your house?
There's a cage in my house.
Oh, dear.
Spectre versus Rectum.
Just like Silence of the Lambs, isn't it? Pemberton Shyamalan Walker. What twists have you got in the store for us tonight, Alistair?
It's the usual bullshit, I think.
Wouldn't expect any more. Mikey Tiny Tim Twatwa over there on the other side. He has sent some things over. And I'm Hellenic Void 32. Joined by some special guests. Leon Jumblesale. Leon, it's been many, many years. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, looking forward to getting to some full terror.
Rich seems, isn't it? And joined by enemy of the show, Frose Ouija board. How you doing, Frose?
Terrible.
Have you bothered turning up for this? Thought we just agreed you would never show your face again.
I'm a glutton for punishment.
So one of the first things we're going to do is a ranking of terror, a ranking Roger of terror. So I've made this kind of a tier system thing. And I'm going to play some songs. I'm going to ask you about how spooky they are. Before we get to that, I'm going to put some dishonorable mentions. These were spooky songs that people kind of listed. I asked people on the social medias, and many, many people. Pittsville Direct, Pumpkinhead, Pumpkin Super Mashed Potato, Craigness, Gross Chapel, Billy's Dead, Don't Call Me Darling, Succession Man, An Older Lover, Sleep Debt Snatches, although there's some controversy there, and This Day, pre-MDMA years, Chillinism, and the theme from Sparta FC. Anyone want to say why any of those are spooky or not?
I think I went for theme for Sparta FC, and the rationale behind that was that reality is much more frightening than fiction. And yeah, being caught up by football hooligans, no, I don't like the idea of that. That's pretty frightening.
Interesting. It was actually the only song you voted for.
No, I voted I'm a Mummy as well.
They're all terrifying to the
We were talking in the chat, weren't we, about how we were going to... I think me and Ezra were having a slight conversation about this in terms of what we were picking up for. I was thinking a couple of criteria, if it mentioned a monster, and then the other thing for me was if I could imagine it in a horror film, you know, like the whole hit priest scenario.
For me, horror is a big one. I'm an enormous fan of horror fiction, horror movies. You know, the way I interpreted the brief was because I feel like it's very, very subjective, you know, especially when you get into music, like what is scary music? It's very subjective, and it's probably a lot about the context and the way you're feeling when you hear the music. And so I was going for songs that have disturbed me. And so that's why ones which might be obvious to most people, and I would say maybe objectively should be in there, like Spectre versus Rector. I didn't vote for it because I was just going for the tracks which had actually ruffled my feathers.
Indeed, indeed. There was some consensus, but those ones just got a little bit of love, a little bit of a mention, and it's easy to see why some of them are a bit spooky. But the first set of songs that we're actually going to look and rank by spookiness are theme from Era Aurori, Eat Yourself Fitter, Smile, Rod, Hard Life in the Country, Chino, and Riddler. I'm going to play you a little bit of all of those, so sit back and relax for a few minutes, and then we will rank the heck out of them.
Eat yourself fitter!
Up the stairs, mister!
Eat yourself fitter!
Tech-faded male mass, decadence. He said, smile, smile,
Yeah, it's a bit sort of wryd, John.
Indeed. Steve's here. All right, Steve.
All right, mate. Bit
How you doing?
There.
All
Not
right.
bad. Bit croaky. We went to see some German tech Trezor in Berlin.
yeah.
I recommend
Nice.
it. If you want a bit of German tech now, you know.
Your proper nail stuff, isn't it?
Hypnotically, it beat you into submission.
Nothing works as a better hangover cure than a bit of heavy, hard-edged, scary fall.
Oh, indeed. Indeed.
Here we go, Steve. Go for do your best, Vincent Price.
The Machen, yeah. Action.
Second Dark Age. Arthur Macken of the great god Pan. The minutes passed slowly. They could hear a slow, heavy ticking. There was an old clock in the passage. Clark felt sick and faint. His knees shook beneath him. Suddenly, as they watched, they heard a long, drawn sigh. Did the color that had vanished return to the girl's cheeks? and suddenly her eyes opened. Claw quailed before them. They shone with an awful light, looking far away, and a great wonder fell upon her face. Her hands stretched out as if to touch what was invisible. But in an instant, the wonder faded and gave way to the most awful terror. The muscles of her face were hideously convulsed. She shook from head to foot. The soul seemed struggling and shuddering within the house of flesh. It was a horrible sight, and Clark rushed forward as she fell shrieking to the floor. 3 days later, Raymond took Clark to Mary's bedside. She was lying, wide awake, rolling her head from side to side and grinning vacantly. Yes, said the doctor. It's a great pity she is a hopeless idiot. However, it could not be helped. And after all, she has seen the great god Pan.
Fantastic. Great work there. Very spooky. And obviously, Mac and the great god Pan pops up several times through the Falls Oeuvre. First thing we're going to do here is I'm going to throw out the name of one of the songs, and there's 5 levels of spookiness. I put the unutterable right at the top. That cannot and should not be named. Some hex inductions, followed by some sinister bends, some witchy trials, and down at the bottom, wonderful and just a bit frightening. So I'm going to ask our guests first, and basically they get to choose, and if anyone wants to counter that or add to it, feel free. It's going to be a bit of a free-for-all. So Leon, you're first up with Eat Yourself Fitter. What level would you put Eat Yourself Fitter at?
I would go for witchy trials. I think there's a presence in Eat Yourself Fitter. There is a malevolent presence, but it's not entirely horror. So it would go somewhere in the bottom half.
The video for me, the song itself's not that spooky, but the video gives with those flies all over their face and drinking that sick.
Yeah, the pink goo dribbling out of the corner of Carl Burns' mouth is not pleasant at all.
All right then, let's stick it down here in the witchy trials.
Yeah, this was near the top for me. One thing that the Fall have always done really wonderfully is sneak in like some subliminal backing vocals, whispers and croaks and whatnot. On Eat Yourself Fitter, that's the most devastating use of them. It did almost make me chunder when I heard it.
It always reminds me of Goblin, in the soundtrack for Suspiria.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that repetitive drum? It's like a sort of a tribal.
That's it, yeah. Which sounds like a person being hung upside down from the ceiling and then like smacked with planks of wood.
I think it's not in the slightest. I think it's, if anything, it's funny.
You're tough, Al. Very tough.
I'm keeping it where it is, but it's you made a good point. Pip, what do you think of theme from Error Aurori? Where would you put that one?
Well, I really enjoyed listening to that then, because it's been a while since I've heard it. It's a great tune, but the thing that really sticks with you is Funky Si's rhythm, which is absolutely brilliant all the way through. It just carries it all the way through. But no one's ever going to accuse Funky Si of hammering someone to death, are they? He's a beautiful drummer. He's not a thuggish John Bonham or Ringo Starr, is he? So I'm going to kind of put this towards Witchy Trials probably for me, this one.
We met Funky Si before the play, and I think he should change his name to Lovely Si.
Oh, it is.
That is all.
Anyone want to jump in on theme from Error Aurori before we move on?
Yeah, I think this one is by far the scariest one, because it sounds like Mark Smith's got a tambourine in his hand and he could be walking around the stage, twatting it back around the back of your head. And you'd have your hands full of guitar, like you can do. So it's a scary one because it's weaponised.
I agree with Alistair there. I think it got that vibe of, someone dragging some kings around the floor. It's got a visceral sound to it.
I'm moving out one. Yes. Next up is Smile. Steve, where would you put Smile?
I'm pushing towards X-stroke unutterable's It's got a lot of menace, hasn't it? On the face of it, literally, no pun intended, maybe a pun intended. On the face of it, a smile's like a happy thing, but it's obviously just the very sinister end of the smile spectrum. And it's like, smile, smile. It's almost like torturing somebody and saying, smile, you will smile. You know what I mean? It's not like smile, do you?
Totally agree with you, Steve. It doesn't just get its fingernails under your skin; it gets the tip of a filleting knife, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like a serial killer in action.
It's a serial killer. He wants you to smile while they finish you off. After many days of
forced to smile in the horrible circumstance.
It's like the smile of the Joker as well, isn't it? It's so menacing.
I think he goes up top for it. Yeah.
I've said before, I think it's the most menacing of all fall tracks.
The cliche, it's funny because it's true. I think in the case of the Fall, the ones that hit me are the ones that are scary because they're true. And Smile is definitely one of them. And so I'm right behind you there, Brendan.
Yeah. All right, we've got a few more. Al, where you put in Rod? Realm of Dusk?
Nice surf song. There's nothing scary about that.
It's dusky.
It's a bit frightening. I agree with Al. Yeah.
You're dumbing it with frightening praise.
It's a sweet tune, and it is dusky, but not necessarily in a spooky dusk way. So yeah, fair enough. What about Chino? This came up a few times, surprisingly. Dark vibe to it, but also a lot of lyrics about death and loss.
Been trapped in a hospital.
That's reminding me of that Jimmy Savile documentary. Halloween.
Where would you put Chino, Leon, in this list of rankings?
It deserves to be at least sinister bends or above.
Okay.
For just that feeling of being ill and stuck in a hospital, draft in the corridor, risk of slipping on the floor. He does Slippy Floor, doesn't he? But the two tracks cross over a bit on the album. So, yeah, I think there's genuine fear in that track.
Some dread. And then Riddler, which is interesting. None of the gang voted. This was the one on social media that kept coming up. A lot of people said this and said it was a very dark, gothic kind of riff. It kind of is.
Why does it say Riddler here?
Or the Fall of Goth band?
It's a good question.
There's got the DNA in there somewhere.
Let's have a bit of a listen to Chino and Riddler.
Strong start.
This was an actual recount of the operational experience when he thought at first going out, but in fact was going in.
You sound like a geek playing out something. Oh, what a ripper. Good old great thing.
Menacing and macabre. I'm putting Riddler somewhere in the middle, probably sinister bends.
I think if it was in other company, it'd be higher, wouldn't it? I was just thinking, like you're saying about how sort of frightening you find these songs. I think maybe Briggs would find Don't Call Me Darling more threatening. Context to it's aimed at as well.
I would put Riddler a bit higher because of the mind-bending paranoia, conspiratorializing that's going on there, Operation Mindfuck and all that, and just the people wandering around calling each other Riddler, and you don't know why. It's very Prisoner-esque. Also, the music is pretty dank.
To me, there's almost like an underlying conversation going on here about the different kinds of horror genre, because there's American horror, which is all about jump scares and the horror that sort of when the door opens kind of thing, and then European horror is all about atmosphere and the sinister and the threat and all that kind of thing, isn't it? So I suspect some of us lean more towards that atmosphere thing, and some of us are leaning more towards that slasher 80s blood everywhere kind of thing.
When you are young, you more can react to a jump scare If you get older, you perhaps possibly get more sophisticated, atmospheric European type stuff, don't you? But
more boobs and European stuff.
I wonder with the surfiness and swanginess of Riddler, whether it airs more on the side of the jump scare, bit Jaws 3 rather than,
Yeah, that's a good analogy, yeah.
Hard Life in the Country. This is one of my
like
favourites.
Straw Dogs.
It is a proper malevolent folk horror tune. Pip, what you put in it?
Right at the top. I thought that and Smile are terrifying.
Smile is very, very similar, like with the guitar riff to Riddler, if you listen closely.
I agree. Hard Life, the music's dissonant, but then the song itself is really menacing. The lyric and it's a really good story.
Talking about Hard Life in the Country, I'd say it's sort of stablemate, contraflow. The countryside so much. That's a bit menacing if I think of it in that way. That sort of desperation, hating being there.
Are any of you familiar with the story of Marquis Smith when I think he was with Mick Middles, and they went to the Lake District and Smith started seeing all these, ghosts appearing at the woods. Very uncomfortable in the countryside,
If you had to, Ezra, where would you put Sleep Debt Snatches? Not officially in the rankings.
Sleep Debt Snatches also unuterables, because one of the most terrifying things that I've ever experienced is not being able to sleep, and describes that beautifully. It kind of reminds me of Nightmare from Elm Street, because you have this almost fairy tale like jaunty kind of introduction, and then this kind of descent into the jarring, grinding netherworld of just not being able to sleep. Yeah, it's fairly terrifying.
A very good call, I'd say. It's a long, dark night of the soul and all that.
Pip, if you don't mind, I got something for you to read here. It's a weird tale, the kind of which you are very fond of.
Hate wide for dog breeder, in the town of the port, a never seen dog breeder. This is the tale of his replica. Name was J. Temperance, only two did not hate him. Because peasants fear local indifference. Pet shop. One night, vet is called out from his overpaid leisure to Temperance household, delivered, ran out, and phoned his wife in terror. The next bit is hard to relate. There are no readouts for this part of the track. The newborn thing hard to describe, like a rat that's been trapped inside a warehouse base near a city tide. Brown sock, purple eyes, and fed with rubbish from disposal barges. Brown, uncovered, no changeling, as the birth was witnessed. Only one person could do this. Yes, said Cameron, and the thing was in the impression of J. Temperance. His hideous replica, scrutinized little monster, disappeared through the door. His hideous replica.
Very nice. That's quite a spooky. It's quite a weird tale, there, isn't it? One of Smith's most straightforward, weird stories.
It's also one where he's lifting directly from some of the tricks that people like Lovecraft and Machen and Lord Dunsany and stuff would come out with. This sort of the next bit's hard to relate. It's unutterable. Oh, there's a bit missing here, like a Laguna from an old manuscript where the text is kind of just ripped out. It is of that sort of 30s weird stories vibe, the whole mixing animals with people, Island of Dr. Moreau kind of stuff going on. Very creepy.
Yeah, and it's related often to the Lovecraft story of late Arthur Jermyn and his family, which is an interesting story, but pretty dodgy. But also it crosses over to things like the Dunwich Horror, the thing locked in the attic. Brilliant.
It's famous sort of Lovecraft. The lyrics on about green jelly, song about green jelly. I didn't know until recently that's a reference to a Lovecraft story, isn't it, as well? Green jelly.
Oh, I'm really disappointed. I thought it was a Rod Hull reference.
This was one at first, but no, it's Lovecraft.
Couples with Goblins, with the green jellies.
Someone will check us on this. So our good friend Tiny Tim Twar on the other side has bought himself a synthesizer and has made us some tracks. I'm going to play a couple for you, see if you can guess which ones they are. that?
Blindness, isn't it?
Great guess,
Well
Leon.
done.
It's not
Better than
blindness.
the original one.
It's very similar to blindness, but he's aimed for a different track. It's one we've already mentioned today. I'll give you the clue of what he called it: Bleep Death Snatches. If that doesn't give too much away. All right.
It's sort of a speeded up kind of
Let
version.
me play you a second one.
What about us? Isn't it?
Fantastic. That one's a little bit more
What about
easy
us?
to get. It's not
What
What
about
About Us. It's a good try.
I thought it was What About Us first, but it's a figure walks, isn't it?
It is a figure walks.
I love the way he's put that French horn preset through all the distortion to get that really distinctive voice timbre. Beautiful.
What was he calling it in the chat? Is it Dungeon Core or
A
something?
spigot spurts.
Spigot Spurts is his thing, but he's calling it Dungeon Core. There is a genre called Dungeon. Frose, are you still with us?
Yeah.
You got any jokes for us about the fall at Halloween?
We haven't spoken about Series 1 or 2 at all. Never mind Series 3. Gillian Anderson hasn't come up once. Here was a joke from Chatbot. Why did Marquis Smith never go to the bakery?
I don't know.
Because he preferred his lyrics fresh, not half-baked, say on the map.
Intellectual gag, like it.
Not very spooky, the joke, although it was
All these songs so far have terrified me.
very good.
I subscribe to Daily Mass spook satire stories. The don't know if you've seen them. The one that popped up this morning was 5 bands you pretended to like to impress a man. And what the top one was The Fall. It's just a man shouting.
What do you call a techno hangover? Banging head.
Very good. Very good. The Hallucination show worked very well, but what we didn't really focus on too much was the child labour that was employed during the show. So the Gnarly Hall chimp testing facility went out its way to employ children for the performance, and one of them, a young lady called COCO, I hope I'm saying that right, has read a little section from the infamous Green Book of the Little Folk, written by Arthur Machen, Smith's favourite, and Smith was obviously a member of the Machen Society.
Child labour and nepotism.
What's that?
Child labour and nepotism.
What we do best.
I went on into the dreadful rock. There were hundreds and hundreds of them. Some were like horrid grinning men. I could see their faces as if they would jump at me out of the stone and catch hold of me and drag me with them back into the rock so that I should always be there. And there were other rocks that were like animals creeping, horrible animals, putting out their tongues, and others were like words that I could not say, and others like dead people lying on the grass. I went on among them, though they frightened me, and my heart was full of wicked songs that they put into it, and I wanted to make faces and twist myself about in the way they did. And I went on and on a long way till at last I liked the rocks and they didn't frighten me anymore. I sang the song I thought of, songs full of words that must not be spoken or written down. Then I made faces like the faces on the rocks, and I twisted myself about like the twisted ones, and I lay flat on the ground like the dead ones, and I went up to one that was grinning and put my arms round him and hugged him.
Very nice. With the little folk right there. Spooky stuff.
It was a top job. Never work with children and animals because they steal the show. But I hope that she's not had too many nightmares after reading that.
So we're in our next section, the next bit of ranking stuff. Now, these are songs that got a little bit of love, but aren't in the real rankings. So if you want to comment any of these, please do so. Fiberbook Troll, Hip Priest. Only one person voted for it, so it's not good. It's not getting a vote. Autotech Pilot, Sing Harpy, Light Fireworks, Das Vulture, Hurricane Edward, Crop Dust to Younger Cloth, leave the capital in the last days of Channel Fura.
Drop Dust has that horror. Mez does horror war imagery really well. So there's tracks like Free Range, Tommy Shooter, Bremen Nacht, Moleskine Tyrol, which all have horrific skyscraper tall Germans in great coats, that sort of imagery, World War II imagery, which is always pretty horrific, I would say, like reality, isn't it? Horror reality, like what Ezra was saying, is it? Or in those tracks. Younger Cloth as well has got that real psychedelic kind of reading of Marky Smith seems to be seeing all kinds of strange stuff in a, maybe in a sentence, and describing how the J looks in the letters on a page, and that's kind of deeply psychedelic horror, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. Very much about the lines between fiction and reality getting blurred and magic and things.
Yeah, in between sleep and waking up and going. I think a lot of this does depend on context and how you're feeling and what you've been experiencing, because Days of Channel Fura is, well, we'll put it at the top of the minute, because I'm in Berlin and went to the Jewish Museum. It's at the top of my scary list.
For me, a lot of these tracks, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them are actually good times music for me, which I'll put on at a picnic, or when I feel like a party or a gathering needs a bit of get up and dance to it. Like, I like to stick on a bit of Hip Priest and cut some rope.
I'll come to your party then.
Obviously, Hip Priest being in Silence of the Lambs has connected it indelibly in the minds of a lot of people. But for me, it's not a spooky song outside of that. No. The ones that are going to be voted on are New Face in Hell, Lucifer over Lancashire, Sinister Waltz, Kinder of Spine, City of Goblins, Hotel Bloodell in Iceland. So let's relax and let's have a listen to some of those.
Enthusiast intercepts government secret radio band and uncovers secrets and scandals of deceitful type proportions.
do there? It was grave. I might need it.
You think it's the pipes, but it turns on the lights. celestial object was fired, and I did not feel for my compatriots. Hated even the core of myself. Not a matter of ill health. It was fear of weakness deep in core of myself. The fact's attainment was out of.
One thing was very clear. There's so many to choose from. We're not going to run out of spooky fall songs anytime soon.
Strong field, though.
Indeed.
You know what?
Does it even get in there?
Right. Well, it's like you do this every time, Brian. Right? You stick all the ones that you know that I'm not going to like. You stick them in the same group, and then you know that I'm going to have a whinge. These aren't scary. New Face in Hell is like
they're just good.
It's a
I
joke.
find these terrifying. All of these
a bit frightening.
It is a joke.
You've obviously got a high level of techno.
Diet of pies.
Immunity, or whatever to horror there. Because I don't know. I've told down. I'm agreeing with New Faces. I love a kazoo so much you can't help but smile when the kazoo comes in.
Do you find the Velvet Underground scary?
Yeah.
It's no vibrations, but wait.
The only thing that's scary about A New Face in Hell is that I might twerk if I hear it.
Ezra, what about Lucifer over Lancashire then? Come on, surely the Pendle Witches put
same actually. Yeah, it's just party music. It doesn't even flicker on my hauntometer.
It's a good dance tune.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's a bit too jaunty to be truly terrifying.
It would have to have much darker lyrics to be terrifying because it's so jaunty in the tune. Yeah.
Tonight's enigma: monster parties, proved so upsetting. Most experts refuse to speak with us.
Let's have a bash of some kind.
That's a Mr. Show sketch called Monster Parties Fact or Fiction, where they interview people about like the monster mash, and they go to graveyards and they see vampires dancing. And it always, when I hear these silly kind of like these ones, they sort of like most of these are in the silly kind of end of scary, I think, and that's I always think of that one.
Not taking itself too seriously.
So we're putting Lucifer of Lancashire towards the bottom in terms of scares. We'll put it down with the Witchy Trials.
It sounds like a BBC Three show.
It does. Homes with Lucifer.
To your person's observation. Yeah.
Leon, what do you reckon to Sinister Waltz?
It doesn't strike me as being one of particularly scary. No, it's got the nice electronic, but no. I'll put it pretty low. It's a Funky Side one.
I believe so, but I can't remember.
Dave Bush in Funky Side,
possibly, but it's going down at the bottom. It's
surely that has to go under Sinister Benz, though. I mean, the clue is in the title.
Vito Corleone.
Yeah, I got to disagree here. I think this one's terrifying. My grandfather told me that sometimes when you take too much hallucinogenic drugs, you feel like you're trapped in a kind of a stained glass window. And that song certainly sounds like someone's trapped in a stained glass window that's playing like bossa nova preset rhythm on a cheap synthesizer. And there's this guy going, "Oh, he must come down." I think it's actually terrifying and should be in the Unutterables.
That's convinced me to put it a bit higher.
It always reminds me of when Doctor Who used to be scary. It's got that really sinister synth sound. It's that 3/4 thing, which always it either makes it jovial or off kilter, and it's definitely off kilter in this one.
The devil's music, isn't it? Okay. How about Kinder of Spine?
It's a later one, isn't it? When his boys would become alarmed. I like the song, but it sort of takes away from it because trying harder in this one, I think, than he has in when he's younger years to be scary. It's more subtle, if you know what I mean. I like the song, but it's a bit more of the jokier side.
Fair enough. Any counters?
It'd be scarier if I didn't laugh all the way through it when it was on.
Some people are very scared of spiders, so, it's reality being scarier than their fiction thing again.
I'm not going to die on this hill, but I think Hotel Blodell and the vocals is a ghost sort of thing, a ghost of a young woman who was wronged.
There's something very spooky, not just about the words, but also the music. I'll give you that, and obviously those kind of noises in there. So, where are you putting it then, Steve? Hotel Bloodell?
I would put it X induction myself, but
Right.
it's very controversial. So.
No, I'm with you on that one. I would push it further up towards the top.
Yeah, I reckon it's more Daphne du Maurier. Like, it's a fantastic song, and no mistake, and it's certainly haunted, but it's not actually scary. It's just kind of, it's just got that yearning, spooky.
I think you're right. I'm probably like, I went to see Frank Skinner, another big Fall fan, the other night in Halifax, and he did a joke that involved Catherine Linton in Wuthering Heights when she's banging on the window. Let me in, and all that. So it's that kind of vibe as well.
I get that too. I get the kind of Wuthering Heights, the kind of
Gothic.
There's something gothic and menacing kind of in the background of that song. We voted it out, sadly. I think it's one of my favourites, but I get it. But I'm going to put it with Hex Inductions, although I'm somewhere between the two. So what about City Hobgoblins?
The World of Finance is pretty scary.
True.
It's music for dancing for me.
I've never thought of it as being horror. You know, the hobgoblins are, a metaphor for something else. So
yeah,
it was in Spinal Tap, isn't it? Where they're dancing round Stonehenge.
It's a little bit silly. All right, it can go down at the bottom then.
Isn't it comes from a Manchester street gang when he was City Hobgoblin?
Maybe. I know Psycho Mafia did.
It used to be like a gang in the 50s and 60s and 70s around Salford, Manchester, City Hobgoblin.
Nice. How about Iceland then? Last one in this batch. Pip, where would you put Iceland?
Well, I think it is a truly a Hex induction. This one, what you described it as haunted. You used to describe something as haunted before. I think this definitely is, isn't it? This is like the best story M.R. James never wrote, really. You can hear the wuthering that goes on within the track and all the mythology that's kind of wrapped around it. It's all in the record. It's all in the track. You don't need to hear the stories to know just effective a tune this is. So yeah, it's right near the top for me.
Yeah, I agree with you, but is it a horror story? Is it a ghost story? I don't feel like it is. That's my thing. Like, it's got the kind of luminescent lime green.
Let me throw it right back at you. Is a ghost story a horror story?
Maybe it's a ghost story. It's not a scary ghost story. It's magical, is evocative. You know, it's like a Europe song or something, isn't it? It's not. If we're ranking things on scariness, I wouldn't put it particularly scary, but it's definitely there's a lot of magic in it.
I think what helps make it more scary is when I think of Iceland, the pictures I've seen of it, the beautiful bleakness. Imagine getting lost out in the Icelandic countryside and never coming home, kind of thing. It took me by surprise. I've never really thought of it as scary. I've always thought of it as incredibly atmospheric, and I feel like I've been to Iceland when I haven't, you know what I mean? But yeah, I can feel the fear.
I sense the kind of dread in the background of it, and I think what was interesting that maybe it's really subjective, this one particularly, if you approach it and it's like, oh, it's beautiful and it's magical and this wonderful open spaces, but if something in you is scared of those things, as I am, I'm like, that's terrifying for me to be in this bleak, dark, potentially hostile environment.
The track's up there with Pet Sounds or something for music for relax. Just beautiful as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the beauty of it.
Get nothing but joy from it.
I was just going to say that Iceland is a popular discount retail store in the UK.
It surely is. Terry Katona represents it.
Maybe it should go up a step
because of the cheapness of the prawn rings.
Yeah.
Do you have any more fall-based Halloween jokes for us there, Frose?
Why was Craig Scanlon the guitarist's favourite golfer? That doesn't even make sense as a sentence. Because he could always hit the fall line straight down the fairway. A lot of them, the punchline has the word fall in it.
Well, I think that one needs a bit of workshopping, but it's got potential,
Here we go. It's quiz time. I'm going to tell you the line from a song, and you have to tell me what song it's in. Now, I tried this in the Christmas one. I abandoned it after 2 rounds because nobody got any of them. But I've got fingers crossed that we've got someone in the room who can Google quick enough. How about this one? There's a ghost in my house.
There's a ghost in my house.
Very good. That was an easy one. How about this one? The brown monk ghost will catch us.
In the park, right?
Very good, Ezra. 1 point.
Oh, very good.
All the film ghosts will rise up.
Rise of the film ghosts.
That's as good a guess as any.
It's a song that only appeared on Total's Turns.
Cary Grant's Wedding.
Good try.
Puritan.
Very good. Ghost Dance, Right Tepid.
CNCS Mouthering?
No, it's a song that was
Pine
mentioned.
Leaves.
Oh, very good, very good. Pine Leaves is in. Pine Leaves is in here, but it's not
You're
Pine
on fire.
Leaves. Well, it's close to a fire. It's not on fire because the answer is incorrect. But
Like Roy Watt from Catchphrase.
say what you see.
Yes, it's good, but it's not right.
It Bust, Ghost Dance, Right Second Dark Age. The people are shouting at the screen now. It's Second Dark Age. Leon, the line "folding out with ghosts" is from Pine Leaves, so you can have half a point for that. Friend of the show, Rob McLeod. He's gone off to Barcelona, so he couldn't actually do a reading for us in his fantastic radio voice, but he has sent me a reading. And see if you can work out what it is. It is fall adjacent, shall we say.
My spectre around me night and day, like a wild beast guards my way. My emanation far within weeps incessant for my sin. A fathomless and boundless deep, there we wander, there we weep. On the hungry craving wind, my spectre follows thee behind. He scents thy footsteps in the snow, wheresoever thou dost go. Through the wintry hail and rain, when wilt thou return again? Dost thou not in pride and scorn fill with tempests all my morn? And with jealousies and fears fill my pleasant nights with tears? What transgressions I commit are for thy transgressions fit? They thy harlots, thou their slave, and my bed becomes their grave. Never, never I return, still for victory I burn. Living, thee alone I'll have, and when dead, I'll be thy grave. To end thy cruel mocks, annihilate thee on the rocks, and another form create, to be subservient to my fate.
What, any ideas what that is in and what song it might connect to by the fall?
Felt like it connected to Psychic Dancehall. I've got no idea.
Blake,
The poem
yeah,
by
it's-
William Blake.
It is indeed. It is My Spectre Around Me Night and Day by William Blake. So lots of fall connections. But obviously one for me was the fact that it talks about my spectre follows thee behind.
Spectre versus Rector.
For me, more a figure walks behind me. I think it's very much about something following you, something mysterious, just like Nicolas Cage is doing to Ezra right now.
So that was a proper American accent as well. It sounded like something off the Twilight Zone or something.
He's very good. Well, he's Canadian actually, so he's doing his
Is it?
proper
Oh,
accent.
Christ.
But
Done it again.
they'll get you. They'll get you the Canadians. He's done wrestling announcing, so he's always good for spooky stuff, right?
Get ready to rumble.
Let's have a listen to a couple more of Stu's fantastic synth tunes.
Rector versus Rector.
Very good, Ezra. You're on fire there.
Very, very good.
John Carpenter kind of style to that one, which I like.
That should be released as a single.
Certainly should. Maybe we can get somebody to scat over it. Stuart, rather in a rather puerile sense, called it Spectre versus Rectum. I don't think that spoils their enjoyment of the song.
A joke that I made at the very start of this episode in a rather precog fashion.
Yes, very good. Have a listen to this one. Very nice dungeon synth there. Anyone wants to take a guess?
Theme Error Horror?
It is,
Is it
theme from He's called the theme from Balamori, which is good. But theme for Error Aurori is a great tune.
I was actually thinking then when it first started that he'd remixed our theme tune to the podcast, and I wondered what could he should really do as a remix, shouldn't he, Stu?
He's very good. He's very good on the old synth. Zazla, Frose, if you don't mind, I've got one of Lovecraft's questionable texts for you to read, but it's a good one, which does connect a little bit again to the concept of a figure walking around a bit.
Certainly. During the winter of the 1927 to 28, officials of the federal government made a strange secret investigation of certain conditions in the ancient Massachusetts seaport of Innsmouth. The public first learned of it in February, when a vast series of raids and arrests occurred, followed by the deliberate burning and dynamiting, under suitable precautions, of an enormous number of crumbling, worm-eaten, and supposedly empty houses along the abandoned waterfront. Uninquiring souls let this occurrence pass as one of the major clashes in the spasmodic war on liquor, but I was not to reach my destination without one very strong impression of a poignantly disagreeable quality. The buzz had come to a sort of open concourse or radial point with churches on two sides, and the bedraggled remains of a circular green in the centre. The structure's once white paint was now grey and peeling, and the black and gold sign on the pediment was so faded that I could only, with difficulty, make out the words "Esoteric Order of Dagon." As I strained to decipher this inscription, my notice was distracted by the raucous tones of a cracked bell across the street. The sound came from a squat-towered stone church of manifestly later date than most of the houses, built in a clumsy Gothic fashion, and having a disproportionately high basement with shuttered windows. I knew that those horse strokes were telling the hour of 11. Then suddenly, all thoughts of time were blotted out by an onrushing image of sharp intensity and unaccountable horror, which had seized me before I knew what it really was. The door of the church basement was open, revealing a rectangle of blackness inside, and as I looked, a certain object crossed, and had I been in a steadier mood, I would have found nothing whatever of terror in it. As I realised a moment later, it was the pastor, clad in some peculiar vestments doubtless introduced since the order of Dagon had modified the ritual of the local churches. The thing which had probably caught my first subconscious glance and supplied the touch of bizarre horror was the tall tiara he wore, an almost exact duplicate of the one Miss Tilton had shewn me the previous evening. This, acting on my imagination, had supplied namelessly sinister qualities to the indeterminate face and robed, shambling form beneath it.
Very good, Frose. As someone who doesn't like the fall, or reading, or words, you made an excellent job there.
Could have fooled you. I have to go in like 5 minutes, by the way.
Good.
My ears are going to be sick.
So the next bit of ranking, these are some dishonorable mentions that just got one shout out. Disney's Dream Debased, Mansion, Pine Leaves, Powder Keg, I Come and Stand at Your Door, Midnight in Aspen, Coach and Horses, 9 out of 10, Squidlord, Serum, Last Commands of Xylothrep, and Hittite Man.
Midnight in Aspen's just too beautiful to be scary, I think.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Last Commands of Xylothrep, was I the only one who voted for that one?
Yeah.
I think Disney's Dreams Debased has got a fair shout for being a scary tune, considering it's to being scarier than fiction.
Yeah, the story behind that. Yeah. And Squidlord is one where he invokes Cthulhu pretty directly to attack the young lads who beat him up.
Contains a real curse, doesn't it, the Squidlord tune? Because it basically wishes, harm up.
It's like properly an invocation. It's like, it's a spell.
It's funny, I've been rereading William Burroughs' City of the Red Knights recently, and in the opening to that, he does this big, massive invocation to all these weird and wonderful creatures from mythology and stuff, and it's you can hear Smith leaning into that in Squidlord, can't you?
Come and Stand at Your Door is really spooky for me because it's about the idea of ghosts appearing at your house. I think they do a particularly spooky version of it. And similar for Pine Leaves, when you know the kind of the vibe that's going on behind it. Very, very spooky song. Whereas Mansion is just... It's silly Disney haunted mansion stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, when you told us about this because, I've just moved house and started a new job, so I could only really go for the tracks I remembered as being scary as well. That was the other scientific selection process. At the time, I was like, I'm sure there's something shit your pantsing on Levitate. And I'm sure there's something on Bend Sinister as well. And so, yeah, there are all these songs that we left out. And that's good because this podcast will continue for the rest of human civilization, which isn't that long. I think we'll have a couple more Halloweens anyway.
Easy.
Lasts.
Horror of Levitate comes from the thought of what it must have been like to be in the fall at the time.
But the rankings for this round are Impression of J, Temperance, All Leave Cancelled, I'm a Mummy, Before the Moon Falls, Jawbone, and the Air Rifle. So let's have a little bit of a gander at those.
Dog breeder in the town of the ports. I've never seen dog breeder. This is a brown socket, purple eyes. I'm met with rubbish from disposal barges. A brown and covered, no changeling as the birth was witnessed. Only one person could do this. Only one person could do this. Yes, Sir Cameron, and the thing was in the impression of J. Temperance.
I gotta go, but I'll leave you with this joke. Why did the zombie refuse to eat brains on Halloween? Preferred impressions of J. Temperance, a more refined taste. Bye!
I'm feeling that. Feeling great.
Ago. But what happens when I walk up to somebody? Work under the name of the F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T. Who would suspect this? It is serious. Our office is secluded. Those there to suspect would not see the wood for the trees. We were 6 like dice, but we're back to 5. Up here in the north, there's no wage packet jobs for us, thank Christ. While young married couples discuss the poverties of their self-filled tracts and the junior clergy demand more cash, we spit in their plates and wait for them ice to melt.
Alrighty, so we had impressions. Don't leave Cancer My Mummy Before the Moon Falls, Jawbone, impressions of J Temperance. Leon, where would you put that?
Pretty high, unutterable, I think, right near the top. One of, his best depictions of a monstrous creature, which is, birthed through some hideous act.
Unspeakable act.
Great when he describes his monsters. So it's got to be up there. Yeah, terrifying.
The moment where he says it, and the thing was in the impression of J Temperance, is the most melodramatic maybe they ever got.
It gives it the full delivery, expressive.
It's definitely a weird story, isn't it? It definitely belongs in this chart. It's one of them weird things that doing this podcast does to you. You start hearing these tunes in different ways, and now all I can hear when the tune comes on is it just takes a bit of the horror out of it down a little bit. I don't think it's quite sort of the horror of Smile. Stephen King's got this thing about describing horror, hasn't he? About hearing the noise outside, then there's a knock at the door, and then the door opens and you see the horrible thing. This is like a knock at the door, but I don't think it's quite the horrible thing yet.
It's real hammer.
Yeah.
It's grandiose. I feel like there are tongues in cheeks. It's fantastic, but it's the blood of Dracula.
It's campy.
The man who knows his Hammer Dracula films, I'm respecting that. He knows his Hammer horror.
It's the one where he gets trapped in the hawthorn bush at the end, isn't it? It's featured.
Scars?
Probably the last ones of all the Hammer ones are Dracula, Frankenstein, whatever, 1986.
1972 or whatever.
It was always the time slip that was the last nail in the coffin, right?
I did Throne of Blood, Vincent Price, a failed Shakespearean actor.
Oh, and he kills critics in different ways.
Yeah.
I've not seen it. Is that good?
I'm a fan.
That's amazing. Fantastic.
All right, but for me, I think it's a really great story, but it's, I guess, even like Shadow over Innsmouth, if you read it, once the fish people start appearing, you can't really, it's not really that scary.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's actually more of it's actually his only action story. Because he goes on the run, doesn't he?
It's a big chase sequence, right?
Theatre of Blood, the film's called. I got it wrong. Theatre of Blood.
Okay. Of course it is, yeah.
I'm a Mummy. No, that's not scary at all, is it?
No, it's too funny.
Very silly. Alistair's favourite, though. Alistair, tell us about I'm a Mummy.
Who did the original one?
Rob McFadden.
What, he did somebody else who was famous.
He did. It was on Thundercats.
Oh, Snarf. That's
it. Mummies are scary, aren't they? Everybody knows that. Boris Karloff, he's quite famous for being a mummy.
My mummy was lovely.
You gotta snap out of it, Lion-O! Call the Thundercats before...
Shut up, you fuck. Let's find the mega condenser. I'm saying that too.
Great Thundercats outtakes. I'm a Mummy. I didn't even make a picture for it, but it's not scary. It's going down at the bottom.
Fun to have something for the kids at Halloween, that's I'm a Mummy is one for the kids.
It is.
I was listening to this just earlier, cooking my dinner. My head went off on a bit of a tangent, and so if any of you gents completely disagree here, I was thinking back to the original kind of wave of black and white horror in America, like the Universal flicks, and I was like, like Creature of the Black Lagoon, Dracula, Frankenstein. Back then, like, the horror films were about things that weren't actually all that scary, but I suppose they were at the time. But what I mean by that is like things like communism, homosexuals, these were all things that could be scary, that a lot of the people who were involved in making those films were actually from communist countries, were actually maybe practicing homosexuals or deviant in the eyes of the current kind of society that they were in. Yeah, that's kind of what this song is about. And what Mark does, which is so good, which really makes the song, is that he's playing with his reputation, right, as being like, a complete fucking lunatic.
But this song is directly from that era and that scene, isn't it?
It's something Matt Fisher picks up on in the book The Weird and the Eerie, when he's on about how the weird story, it really comes out of the existential trauma of the First World War, and that if you watch Gods and Monsters, which is about James Whale, I think who directed that first Frankenstein movie, there's a lot of references to gas masks as being this kind of scary monster that comes out of the fog, and there's lots of references to No Man's Land when you look at the way that a lot of the Frankenstein's monsters kind of framed and that. So there's a really good book, isn't it, by Eugene Thacker, where he talks about the relationship between horror philosophically and horror as a metaphor and the way it gets used in popular culture.
Before the Moon Falls, how spooky is it?
It's a proper spooky story for me. It's like an Emma James story. It's one of those things that if you get the mood right, I think it can be quite worrying. So for me, it's a bit of a hex induction.
The melody's quite scary, isn't it? Even if you were listening to the words, the melody's quite sort of sinister.
It's empowering, like an MC5 track. Nothing scary about it. It makes me want to go and shoot politicians or something.
You've got a high tolerance to this scariness.
While we're on this one, I figure Walks is definitely...
I mean, like you were saying about temperance, I think it probably shows a bit too much. Doesn't leave quite enough to the imagination for it to be truly scary.
Yeah,
I don't know, cagoules are quite scary, aren't they? When you get a cagoule and it's a bit sticky on the inside and you can't quite see around the back of you.
Very niche phobia you've got there.
That figure walking behind you, I did this week. It's super weird. So I sat on the couch and I was playing guitar, and I thought I was wearing a hat and it'd fallen off because it brushed down my back. I felt a hand brush right down my back. And I looked around and there was nothing there at all. That kind of idea of something being behind you, and especially on a dark and stormy night, is terrifying for me. So although Leon, I'm with you, I think the song itself shows its hand a bit too much. It's like, this is a spooky song, yeah. It's kind of like, but it does resonate with me.
That would be both scary and disappointing, the hand down your back, because probably think you're on a promise there.
Long fingernails are scary as well, aren't they? Dirty fingernails are awful.
Blood-soaked.
Fingernails in general, just the
human body in all of its
and
forms.
human hair. Human hair is another weird thing, isn't it? It just grows out of your head, but it doesn't if you think about it too much, you'd go insane, wouldn't you, really? Fingernails and hair.
Indeed. Yeah. What about Jawbone and the air rifle? It fits neatly for me again in that weird tale. It's a bit silly.
Can I jump in with defence of that? Just listening to it in this context of this theme, this show, I think it's scarier than I thought. I think because it's I can believe it. It sounds like it really happened. You know what I mean? He described it so well. The infertile spouse and sort of quite dark themes like that. Rob, who does the tour, the fall tour at Pressure Arts Fest a couple of times, he took us down to the graveyard behind the church inn, references that in the song as well. So it feels real to me. It feels like it happened in Prestwich 200 years ago.
So I think the book, time has got the better of us, so we won't be able to dig into it too much. And that has the similar kind of vibe. It's someone very steeped in the television and movies of these kind of weird tales. You would definitely have that as one of the Hammer 70s TV shows, Tales of the Unexpected, Twilight Zone kind of thing.
Again, it kind of suffers a little bit for me knowing where the music comes from and that Run Rabbit thing at the start, which is, I guess, in other circumstances, sometimes you hear like a bit of a mundane song against a horror setting. It works, but I don't know, it's a bit too jovial for me, the start of this. But yeah, it's a great story, and it's like one of those true crime stories, isn't it? It's like the kind of thing you'd see somebody reading on the bus.
Yeah.
Very, very, very quick bit of Fall trivia. Pretty sure Frank Skinner said it's his favourite Fall track. Okay. He didn't mention it the other night when I saw him doing stand-up, but anyway.
It's a fun one for sure.
Trivia. It was the theme to his chat show.
He also did that fucking god-awful version of whatever song it was with David Baddiel.
Oh, yeah. What song are we talking about here?
Jawbone. Jawbone, yeah.
Okay.
Ezra, are you up for tag team Inspector versus Rector with me? We'll do
I am,
couple of lines each. Part 1, Spectre versus Rector. The Rector lived in Hampshire. The Spectre was from Corazina. In evil dust in the air, the Rector locked his doors.
Part 2, Detective drives through Hampshire, stops because of the fog there, and thinks a visit to the Rector. And meanwhile, Spectre possesses Rector. Rector becomes Spectre. Sludge high, choi choi. Enter Inspector. Even as he spoke, a dust devil suddenly arose and struck him.
Part 4, Detective versus Rector. Detective versus Rector possessed by Spectre. Spectre blows him against the wall, says, "Die, wretch, this is your fall. I've waited since Caesar for this, damn Latin. My hate is crisp. I'll rip your fat body to pieces. M.R. James, vivat, vivat. Yog-Sothoth, Ray Milland, Van Greenway, R. Corman."
Scene 5. Comes a hero, soul possessed 1,000 times. Only he could rescue Rector. Only he could save Inspector. And this hero was a strange man. Those flowers, take them away, he said. They're only funeral decorations. And oh, this is a drudge nation, a nation of no imagination. A stupid man is their ideal. They shun me and think me unclean.
I have saved 1,000 souls. They cannot even save their own. I'm soaked in blood, but always good. It's like I drunk myself sober. I get better as I get older. That was his kick from life. That's how he pads out his life, selling his soul to the devil. And the Spectre enters hero, but the possession is ineffectual.
Last scene, hero Inspector walk from the scene. Is Spectre banished forever? The Inspector is half insane. The hero goes back to the mountains. He was an exorcist, but was exhausted. The Rector is dead on the floor. We talked about Corazina. It was directly referenced a total mythos that we dug into last week. And there's a suggestion on F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T that it relates to Count Magnus, this one. But I think it doesn't directly. Count Magnus is the one where I guess he's like a vampire ghost kind of. It's a really nice tune, and the way it's been done with all of the kind of abstract noises and things in there. I was going to have us read a bit from the Otherwise. Worth a read, an interesting one, but we're going to have to come back to that another time, unfortunately.
It is good. Lovely man, Greg. Came to see me do Churchothefall in Brighton when he lived there. He was very, very nice guy.
Yeah, Graham Duff and Smith wrote it, and then there's also bits in the book of suggestions for the series if they ever got to do the 12 episodes. And I think Duff had a good hand in keeping Mark in check, but you can definitely see that a lot of it is the kind of stuff that Mark touched on in his songs. It's definitely got a strong feeling.
The witches and all that, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think he stands up. I think he'd make a good.
I think so. So this brings us to the last little section of songs. So dishonorable mentions from Ghost in My House, Winter, Live at the Witch Trials, Various Times, Psychic Dancehall, Fiery Jack, Second Dark Age, Medical Acceptance Gate, Hex and Definitive, and Lay of the Land. That is a great set of tunes, but they only got a little bit of love. For me, Medical Acceptance Gate has been a true find in this show so far. I didn't know it before. Phil, what's the name of the story that it kind of alludes to?
Well, the Smoke Ghost, it's Lieber's story, which it's like the first urban ghost story. I was just thinking, actually, I really want to do this again next Halloween, because there was a load of tunes that have come up in that bit where I've been thinking, oh yeah, I would definitely vote for that actually next time.
Yeah,
so I think we should redo this again next year, because I've got a better handle on it, because Medical Acceptance Gate is definitely one I would put on my list next year.
Did you do All Leave Cancelled?
Oh, I might not have. Where would you
I reckon
put
you
that?
missed right near the top. We're talking about songs what tell you too much. This song tells you almost nothing. It's got no narrative at all that you can follow. It's entirely cryptic. All the horror comes from the sound. Mez is sick at the time. He doesn't hide that in the song. You can hear, the phlegm in his throat and the rattle. So all that's, weird moog noises going on. If we're talking scariness, full on horror.
And the noises at the start, it is like proper death metal, like gurgling as
Yeah.
well.
I mean, I don't want to dig into Mark's personal issue in his last days, but the thought when he just said he was obviously pretty ill at the time, that makes it sort of, so real, that voice, you know what I mean?
That's right. What you were saying, Colin, I was thinking, the thing that I like so much about Mark E. Smith is I feel like he tried to write a song for as many kind of phases of being and experiences that he could have as a human being. And that continued right up. But here we've got the song that's about your whole fucking state, your whole coherence as a human being just completely falling apart. Kind of like that in the last period of the Fall, but I feel like All Leave Cancelled is really some very...
Yeah, can always count on you, Darren, to tell us what you think. Should we have a vote on Spectre versus Rector, Bremen, Nacht, and Frightened? They were the last three. Lots of people saying a lot of spooky stuff about that.
Summer's always on my tracks, and in a dark room you'd see more than you think.
Spectre possesses this rector. A raptor becomes a spectre. A sludge, a joy, son. Comes a hero. The soul possessed 1,000. I have saved 1,000 souls. They cannot even save their own. I'm sourcing blood, but always good. It's like I've drunk myself sober. I get better as I get older. Ella James, gonna be both, be Lord. Young Supper, great Bill Lord. A bad greenways, I'm caught man. I slash, hey, son. I slash, hey, son. Such a great Bill Lord.
Alistair Aspinall, what do you reckon? What do you reckon to Frightened? Where would you put that in the list?
That's kind of a funny song, I think. So I've put that fairly low down.
How low?
On a witchy trial, by any chance?
I think it's the personal again. I'd put it right at the top because, I don't know, when I've had anxiety problem, it's a great anxiety-inducing song, you know what I mean? Sometimes I don't listen to it if I'm having an anxious period or a depressive period. And also, it's the shock almost of realising that he was frightened. Like in Renegade, he says something about, I can't do anything on the day of a gig. I'm really he's so nervous. And of course, he comes out, gives it the 1,000-yard stare, and you think he couldn't give a shit, If you like it, if you stay, if you don't, bugger off. But he obviously cared so much that he did get stage fright almost.
Been persuaded. I'll move it up a little. I'll move it up to the Sinister Men's.
The Falls, My Mind Playing Tricks on Me by the Ghetto Boys, isn't it? Frightened.
Nice. Yes. What about Bremen Nacht, though, Ian? Where would you put that?
Again, it's quite jaunty and I think is slightly too easy to overlook the horror in the tune because there is that stuff about Smith being freaked out by this place he was playing and then saying he had bruises which were sort of fingerprint shaped on his thighs the next morning. And again, the sort of references to the Holocaust in the war history there. I think I'll put it above halfway, maybe Hex Induction.
Oh, it's very spooky for me. It's the fact that you get some hint from the story, but then when you read into it more, it's it's a spooky story. Pip, you don't go for this kind of stuff, do you?
I voted for this one. I think it's very spooky. I don't know whether I would put it quite that high because it is really. I mean, like Leon was saying at the start, the tune itself is pretty rocking, really, isn't it? But the more you listen to it, and the more that you unpeel this horrible manifestation ghost story that sort of sat in the middle of it all, with all these cultural connotations around it, and especially Smithy's kind of complicated relationship with World War II. Let's put it like that.
Bushwick Bill, rest in peace. What about the big one? The one we've touched on a few times and they got the most votes. Pretty much everyone put it in their list, Spectre versus Rector. Ezra, where would you put Spectre versus Rector?
Trying to go for it objectively, I would put it at Unutterables. I mean, the thing for me is that the first time I heard this tune, I was already done the whole back catalogue of Scott Walker and Throbbing Gristle and Coil. So this kind of discordant guitar stuff. I start listening to it and I think, this is a banging track. Now I feel good. Going back to the beginning, the tracks by The Fall that I've heard that have always been the ones that have scared me have been ones like An Older Lover, because it just hits into the reality of a certain situation and a certain feeling. And it does it so artfully because, of course, it completely sidesteps the whole kind of question of misogyny and just goes for time over lust or whatever, and just these very basic physical experiences that almost every human body goes through. And to me, that's terrifying. Spectre versus Rector is brilliant, and for Halloween, all right, all the way to the top. Why not?
Why not?
Brilliant. I love the way it's produced, and I love the way the guitars kind of emerge from the murk, Lovecraftian tentacles. Excellent stuff.
Yeah.
In other ways, I think Marky Smith was going for it to be the top of a scary tunes list, and I think he hit the target.
It's very tempting, isn't it, to go down the M.R. James path and talk about it in those terms. But when you think about stories like Haunter of the Dark by Lovecraft and the way that he describes darkness as having this presence and the way that it sort of encloses things physically, it's that really claustrophobic atmosphere that's there right from the start of the track and just intensifies. It's a very scary that if you sat on your own with the headphones on in a dark room, there's no way it's not affecting you in some way.
It wouldn't be half as scary if Smith delivered it, in the same way he delivers, say, New Face in Hell. I think the scariness, a lot of it comes from the production in the sounds, in the murkiness, in the separation between the instruments. When I first heard it, I was probably sort of 17, 18, and I knew very little about other stuff, just a big Prince fan, and just hearing that and not even understanding what any of the words meant or knowing who M.R. James or Lovecraft was, you still got all of that sensation just through the visceral impact of the sound that the band were making, separate to any lyrical.
Yeah, the medium is the message as well, right? He's got his point across in the audio, in the noises, in the melody, in the words. I think it's spot on. And even the fact that the story's a little bit ridiculous, it still kind of gets me in the same way that some of M.R. James does, like Whistle and I'll Come and Casting of Runes. They're daft, but they're spooky. If you read them in a darkened room, they do chill.
On a tangent, have you seen that film?
Whistle and I'll Come?
Whistle and I'll Come, yeah, the BBC Play for a Day adaptation, which has
Michael Holden from Paddington.
To watch.
Great understated actor.
I'll play us out with that, but let's have a listen to the last two of the tunes from Stu. Leon, thanks very much. Much appreciated.
Thanks for inviting me.
Nice to meet you, Leon.
Thanks for calling again, Leon.
All right, see if you can work out what this one is.
When it comes at the end, that I'm thinking I know this, but I just can't.
I recognise.
Stuff Ben Sinister.
Yeah.
He's called it British Grenadier. Last one, I think you'll know this one.
Bill is dead.
It is Bill is Dead. He called it William's Corpse, which is good. Bill is Dead, not a spooky song, but a very nice tune there. So that kind of rounds it up. I'm going to play us out with Michael Holden reading from Oh Whistle and I'll Come to You, a great M.R. James. To recap, we voted Smile, Hard Life in the Country, and Spector versus Rector as Unutterable, the scariest fall songs, and then following by Riddler, J Temperance, Before the Moon Falls, All Leave Cancelled, and Bremen Nacht. And then down at the bottom, we said that wryd and City Hobgoblins were just a little bit frightening. I'll post the picture on social media and people can comment should they like.
Great graphic, that, yeah.
Thanks everyone for coming along. Thanks, Steve.
No, but always a pleasure, never a chore.
We may be back next week for a non-fall episode, or maybe we won't. Who knows? We'll have to talk about that. But have a spooky Halloween, everyone. Bye.
Cheers, fellas.
And slight, cold rain. On this bleak stage, at first no actor was visible. Then, in the distance, a bobbing, black object appeared. A moment more, and it was a man running, jumping, clambering over the groin, and every few seconds looking eagerly back. though his face was not to be distinguished.
Its face was made of...
I saw it all right.
Thank heaven for that.
Parkins. Everything's all right. Here, drink this brandy.
It's the idea of a ghost. Oh, keep off, I tell you. Oh, seen your face? At any rate... No. Help!
Help! Somebody help me! Good God! Let go, you filthy brute!